Introducing Recorded Content, a podcast for small, scrappy B2B marketing teams who want to get the most out of podcasting. In each episode, we capture stories from industry experts and podcasters. Listen in and uncover what it takes to launch, run, and grow a successful B2B podcast. Check out and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Let's jump in.
Hey, I'm Tristan. I'm the co-founder of Motion and your host for this episode of Recorded Content. This show is brought to you by Motion, a done-for-you podcast agency for small, scrappy B2B tech marketers. In today's world, podcasts go beyond just audio. When you produce a show for your company, you also create visual and written content. But the traditional audio editing workflow is completely broken. At least it was until Descript came along. At Motion, Descript sits at the center of our entire workflow. With each episode we produce for Recorded Content, or any of our customers' shows, we initiate the process in Descript. And in this episode, I'm excited to continue an ongoing series we have with Descript. Each quarter, we bring on members of Descript's team to talk through the latest updates to their product. These conversations will be a way for you to understand how the product is changing and how you can keep evolving your own podcast workflow. And most importantly, you can get the inside scoop on why Descript is making certain changes and how other customers are adapting. In this episode, I have Harmony Jiroudek and Kevin O'Connell. Harmony is the customer success manager at Descript, and Kevin is a product specialist. We cover some key updates to the product and also uncover what Descript is focused on with their upcoming Season 3 release. All right, well, Harmony and Kevin, welcome back to Recorded Content today.
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, great to be here.
All right, awesome. Well, last time I had you both on, we got into your roles at Descript, so I won't revisit that, but I had a different idea here today. I wanted to ask about your first impression with Descript, because I find that a lot of people, the first time that they see what they can do by editing text content and how that ripples across audio and video, it's such like a mind-blowing experience, and it was for me. So Harmony, I'll just start with you. Like, what was your first impression like when you saw Descript for the first time?
I was blown away. It was kind of like opening up a book, for the first time and being like, oh my gosh, this first chapter is so great. Like, how can it get better? And then you get to the next chapter and you're like, okay, so it does transcription. You also have this like Overdub feature. What is that? Go to the next chapter and you're like, oh, I can record video in here too. And for me, like in my past life of being an online course designer, it was like, where was this tool 10 years ago when I was transcribing like hour-long courses by hand? It was like, this could have saved me so much time. And then in other roles too, like, wow, I could have had a screen recorder that would have immediately transcribed everything. I could have repurposed webinars like that in a snap. So it was a big sort of aha moment. Like, where has this tool been all in my life?
And I don't know if I asked you, so when you saw Descript, is that what attracted you to the company, or did the opportunity to join the customer success team exist and then you kind of saw the technology? What happened first there?
I have to be honest, at first it was the people. I knew Jay from past startup, and I always knew, I was like, okay, this guy, I have to work with him again. He's a superhuman. And if I have an opportunity to work with him again, I'm going to take it. And then when he told me about it, I was like, okay, cool. Let me check out this tool. And I'm like, this is transforming the landscape of how media can be worked with and edited. And I was like, okay, yeah, where do I sign?
Where do I sign up? All right. And here we are. And Kevin, what about yourself? Like, what were your thoughts the first time that you saw Descript?
Well, building off of what Harmony just said, I met Jay when I was at a previous job, and staying in contact with him and working with him on different projects externally and collaboratively was kind of the sealer for me as well. But when I first discovered Descript, I was doing freelance podcast production and working with a bunch of clients and, rendering mixes and sending them a mix with a transcript to mark up and a Google Doc and back and forth. And when I realized I could include people in the editorial process early on and really be hands off for a few rounds and let folks just work on their own and try edits and see how it sounds and feels. And that was just, it was mind blowing for me. It freed me up to do a lot more stuff that I love to do, like making music, sound designing, mixing, and let people that really cared about the content make their editorial decisions.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And I can speak to Jay. I'm assuming we're talking about Jay LaBeouf, right?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. He was the first person that I met at Descript as well. He was on, I think, episode 2 of Recorded Content. And we were like in the earlier stages of rolling out Descript with our team. And this was almost 2 years ago. And you know, he came on board. I was just trying to find someone at the company that would be a good person to introduce Descript to our audience and talk about like the change in workflow. And he just did a phenomenal job. And I've kept in touch with him along the way too. So he's definitely a great person to have a connection with in the industry. And it sounds like he's connected all 3 of us here today as well. You know, like you mentioned, Harmony, the great thing about Descript is like you have this first chapter of the book that you open up and you find out like how different it can really make your overall workflow. And then it just seems like every time you turn the page, there's something new or there's something evolving with the software. And that's the exciting thing about this series. That's what we're going to do is we're going to come back and revisit and get an understanding of what's being rolled out and why. And the last time that you both were on Recorded Content about 3 months ago, we talked about season 2, which was a big release update with Descript. There were a lot of components to that. And one of the major areas of the features that were rolled out were around social video. And we talked about that in the last episode. So I wanted to ask Harmony, since you're on the customer success side, what are some of the things, what's some of the feedback that you're getting since those features were rolled out in season 2?
Yeah. So I think, and this is, we'll get to this a little bit later on in terms of what's coming in future releases, but for the elements that people are using in their social video clips, things like their music, their logos, their images that pair along with all of this great content, they're like, how do I templatize this? So people are getting the gist of like, okay, cool, I can customize this to the look and feel of our brand. We're getting people trained up on how to do that within compositions. But the next step is like, okay, great, I've got all of my elements. How do I reuse this over and over? And so right now there's kind of this little workaround where you can duplicate your project or your composition and just replace the media that's there. But coming later this year, we're actually going to be rolling out templates. So I think that's kind of like the missing piece of the pie here is be able to templatize these social video clips.
Yeah, and that's something I've seen too. And I understand that templates are coming, you know, they're on their way as well. And we'll be excited for that because a lot of things that we do on our side is we do a lot of the custom design and we build that in other applications, and we use transparent PNGs a lot to kind of stack different design elements and we'll also layer in some of the things in Descript as well, like the waveform and progress bar, and we're using dynamic text to roll out the captions as well in a lot of different ways. So there are a lot of creative things that we can do, and that's what we're finding as well. Like, you know, when we do have a composition set up with all those components, it'd be really nice to just kind of pull those into another composition, have them all ready to go. So that'll be a nice feature. But it sounds like based on what has rolled out, people are exploring some of the different creative components that are available. But Kevin, what are you seeing?
A lot of that, just like more creative control over what your social video looks like. And it's been a really cool transition to see folks that are typically audio creators and producers get their start into video editing that they just didn't have the accessibility to before. So people that make audio only podcasts can select a section of their show of audio only podcast and clip it to a new composition and add a bunch of those social video features. And they are now a video editor, right? Like add some B-roll or a still image. But we're also seeing studios being able to take their audio only back catalogs and translate those to visual. So we're working on a project with our friends at Pushkin, where they're taking 60 of their back catalog episodes, applying some social video features and publishing those all to YouTube. So getting kind of away from the static album art look on YouTube that a lot of shows do, which is good and fine, right? It works. but adding a little bit more aesthetic value to the audio so they can go on all platforms, not just ones that are distributed by their RSS feed.
And just to add on to that, I think the thing that is so exciting about this feature is that it's breaking down kind of the walls for people that might not have the resources to break into video podcasting. Like Kevin said, it's just like, okay, let's just start with adding some visuals, some imagery, some music, and you have something that's like video centric now. And we've been hearing this term video podcast. It's like, are we going to be calling this the same thing in 10 years? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it's almost like podcast, and we say that a lot. Like our big thing is podcast is more than an audio channel. Like we say that all the time, and we even have been leading with video podcasts with a lot of the material that we release. And it's interesting because depending on how you enter the space, podcast means a different thing. Like Kevin, you're talking about like some of your podcast traditionalists, they have this really well-produced audio format, but then it's like you do need that video component as a distribution mechanism as well to get more visibility because people almost expect it now. And that's why I feel like if you're relatively new to podcasting or you're starting to consume those and as part of just the content that you're watching each and every day, you need that video piece. You're on YouTube all the time. I mean, TikTok repurposing is really big for podcasts now, and that we're doing a ton of that for customers as well, we're finding. So I think that line is just being blurred more and more, and we're seeing that people are able to use Descript as a way to test out some of those things without bringing on a full-time video editor or motionographer to make that happen. Is that what you all are seeing?
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah,
absolutely.
it's like empowering users to, take something that they may just recorded in their garage and, be able to transform it into this engaging piece of media that, might have never reached an audience like that before, right?
It also opens up this door for a new integration we have, which we can talk about in a little bit, called Edit in Descript, where you can start a recording or a webinar on Restream, Squadcast, or Riverside and record video and audio together and bounce that over to Descript. And a lot of times, folks that were using those tools, especially Squadcast and Riverside, they would just record audio only or have video off or have the video just not use it in their episode. Now you could still release your podcast as audio only and maybe video first as well. But then you have these clips from the interview that are video perspective of each speaker. So even if you're an audio only show, you can still use clips for TikTok, Instagram, wherever else, and add a visual component pretty easily. Just working with us, learn how to use Descript, and you're off to the races. It's pretty great.
Yeah, and it's almost like you read my mind. That was my segue to the next area of features that we'll talk about. And one of those that you sent over before, as we were preparing for this show, a big piece of the latest version of Descript is Edit in Descript, and I actually haven't used this yet. So I'm trying to understand like why this became such a huge priority. And you talked to that a little bit, but just tell us like what the workflow looks like before this functionality was released. Like how are people getting their files traditionally from, let's say, Squadcast or Riverside into Descript? Like what does that workflow look like?
Yeah, I can continue on the Squadcast and Riverside stream, and Harmony could talk about Restream Captivate. But with Squadcast and Riverside, right, we have our remote recording solutions, and we have guests of a show, and you record essentially from a host account, download all those files after, and then maybe you're going to Isotope perhaps to clean up some stuff. Maybe you're going to Descript to start editing right away, run studio sound and clean up the audio. Maybe you're going to Pro Tools, Audition, Logic, wherever it is, but you're downloading all those files, waiting for that download to complete. Then you're re-importing or re-uploading those wherever you're going. With the Edit and Descript integration, you can start in Squadcast or Riverside and finish your recording, click the Edit and Descript button, and immediately populate a new project with all of your files, importing and transcribing within just a couple minutes.
Yeah, and I saw that. I actually got an email from Squadcast because I would say 90 Yeah, 90 to 95% of our customers are on Squadcast, and they released a video where with their new release of Squadcast that's coming out, they will have this edit and Descript button basically that pulls everything over for you. And I think the big thing that you mentioned, Kevin, is and this is what we do for almost 50 shows. We're going out to individual accounts. We're downloading all the material locally, and then that has to then sync to the cloud, and then we're pulling that into Descript. So there are a number of steps involved there, and it sounds like this was something that was created to just make it easier for folks to use Descript. Like, why did this jump up in the priority list, do you think?
So a big part of our mission towards the end of last year was to talk to as many teams as possible. And one of the large pain points was just the time suck of having to download, upload files, use secondary systems too. Like, okay, I'm going to upload this to Dropbox or upload this to Google Drive. Then especially if you're working with external clients, they have to download, keep notes, let's say in Google Docs or in other external systems. And there isn't like one centralized location where all of this interactivity can happen. So through lots of conversations, we're like, okay, well, we should remove some of that friction. What if you could go from your recording system of choice directly into Descript, continue focusing on the story without losing that momentum of moving from one system to another, and then either finishing off your show in Descript or making that final step into Pro Tools and getting it ready for your audience.
And what a lot of people don't know is there's unlimited storage in Descript. So
Yeah.
we've been seeing a lot of folks using Descript as their first phase of file storage solution. And that alleviates exactly like Hermie's talking about, going to Dropbox or Google Drive and waiting for that upload to happen there as a backup and then going to Descript. I've been seeing a lot of folks just pop over Descript first, whether they're going in there or going out later, but they're using Descript as that file storage solution to have searchability, accessibility, everything that we know to be great about it.
Yeah, and so folks know, like, there's no actual you're not downloading anything to your local system. It's basically transferring over the web from Squadcast or Riverside directly to Descript, and then just help folks understand, like, when you are editing in Descript, everything's in the cloud, so it's always synced automatically for users. But explain like how local files are worked with when you're editing, compared to how it's synced up with the cloud. Kevin, can you walk through that a little bit?
So the local storage that exists in Descript is a temporary download to your machine. And it's just to improve playback and editing experience. So when you import into Descript, we're syncing with the cloud. And depending on your preferences, you might have all of your original files downloaded for each project. In that case, you might take up some hard drive space. Or you have the ticker selected for optimizing storage. So you'll just have some optimized assets that will be much smaller in file size, but still allow you to edit and play back with ease. When you go to timeline export, if you're going to Audition, Pro Tools, Logic, wherever, or any of the video export partners, you're going to download all of your original files from the cloud that have been synced. So it's just a way to kind of free up some space, but also give you that really great editing and playback experience.
Yeah, and it reminded me because, when we were predominantly a video agency, we're filming in 4K or even beyond, we would create what we call proxy files to just reduce the file size when you're working locally in Premiere or After Effects. And it was nice that all this was really built in with Descript. You didn't really have to worry about when you export that it was using the highest resolution possible and so forth. So a lot of that's already taken care of, and the the performance of the application itself is kind of something you don't necessarily have to worry about as much. So with that said, we talked about Riverside and Squadcast. So Harmony, what about Captivate and Restream, right? Like what kind of differences do we see there with those other edit and Descript functionality?
Yeah. So I think with Restream in particular, so one thing that we were hearing is like, okay, great. I have all of these high fidelity video recordings. We record them, in Restream. Can I take this hour, 2 hour long stream and be able to quickly repurpose it, get it out, get pieces out to my social media team and start disseminating that information. So it works similarly in the sense that with in Restream, you go to your video storage, go to your recordings, same thing, edit and Descript, you click the edit and Descript button. It in the background, it automatically creates a project. You designate where you want the project to live in your Drive workspace. It starts the automatic transcription in the background. If it's multiple video files, it will automatically generate a sequence. And then, per usual, it opens up a project. You've got your script that you can start working with, and then obviously start working from the timeline as well. And with Captivate, it's a little bit different. It's kind of the reverse process. So
Yeah.
you've got your podcast in Captivate, and let's say you have an interview that you did a year ago, and you're like, oh, you know what? Actually, we need to update this quote or this stat. You can go into Captivate, go to the episode, click edit in Descript, and it will open up the episode in Descript. And then from there, you can make updates. And let's say Kevin and I needed to go in and make some corrections together. It's the same thing where we can collaborate essentially in real time and get that live feedback and then export it back out to Captivate.
Gotcha. Yeah. For folks, Captivate's a podcast hosting platform, and we've had Mark Asquith on recorded content before, and he's one of the founders of Captivate. And that was my thing too. It was, I was interested to understand that a little bit further as far as the use case for that, because Squadcast and Riverside and even Restream, you're creating content. That's like your recording platform. And then, like you said, Harmony, Captivate's almost the reverse of that, where you have like your final piece out there already, but you want to make adjustments. And kind of the one thing that immediately came to mind is a lot of our customers do intros and outros, and they might have like an announcement or something at the end that might not be relevant anymore. So they might want to adjust that. And it sounds like that might be a use case there.
Exactly. Yeah. Intro, outro, or new advertisements, new, even, yeah, just new parts of the story.
All right. Well, let's go to this second big feature that we wanted to talk through, which is called Paste Script Track. And I'll admit, when I first saw this, I wasn't quite sure what this would be. So it was like a little treasure hunt to figure out, what is Descript up to with this one. But Kevin, tell me a little bit about like the challenge that this feature is trying to solve or help people overcome in their workflow.
Absolutely. In Descript currently, as we're writing scripts and we're adding in different pins, so that could be images or B-roll or other music that we're adding as beds, intro, outro music, whatever it might be. When we do any copy and pasting between the temporary script and what we may have just recorded, audio or video, we lose some of those pins in the placement of them. That is no longer the case. Now with Paste Script Track, you can sketch out your ideas, add different pins and different layers and elements, and paste in your recording on top of that, and it will keep the placement of all of your pins. So music, images, B-roll, etc. So that allows you to kind of sketch out the visual and audio elements before you're actually tracking or recording, and keep all the placement of those pieces.
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like, because otherwise you would have to go into each little case and basically reset everything, right? And it's almost like editing twice with your old scratch track versus the new one, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And the future of this feature is, expansive, and we can talk about that in the next episode. But if you can imagine the scratch text creation and the recording creation becoming one, I think there's a lot of cool opportunities that open up.
Yeah. And in Harmony, have you seen like a lot of, because there's always a reason that one of these things comes up on the priority list. I mean, are folks asking a lot of questions about that? Like, where did you see this originate from?
Yeah, I think especially for teams that are trying to figure out how they can bring more of their process into Descript, I think one of the nuts we've been trying to crack is how can we help teams do more of their pre-production process in Descript. And I think Paste Script Track does exactly that. It allows them to, as Kevin mentioned, kind of lay out their canvas, lay out their story, get everything exactly in place where it needs to be. And then when you have that final recorded audio, you just right click, paste, and you're done.
Yeah, and that's a good question too, is just how like the workflow has evolved since you all have, supported Descript and have been involved. Because, like when I started working with Descript, we would pull everything in after it's recorded and kind of the transcript development gives you that foundation to work from forward. But I think what we're talking about here is even backing up a little bit and doing some pre-production before you go ahead and do the live recordings or hire a voiceover talent or record live video and pull that in. And are you seeing that evolution take place with customers? Maybe Harmony, that's a good question for you on the customer success side.
Yeah, I think this definitely has been an opportunity for teams to be able to bring in, either internal team members or even external clients that they're working with into the process earlier, right? So they're like, at some point, you invite a stakeholder to your project, maybe when it's time for them to review. But I think as we've continued to see things evolve, teams are bringing in those stakeholders earlier on in the process to provide that feedback so that there there aren't so many round evolutions of feedback that takes place. It can happen more in real time, and then get to the publishing piece.
Yeah. And with the overdub, are you seeing a lot of folks use that for scratch? Or are they also using that for the final edit? Maybe Kevin, you can talk to that a little bit as far as how people are using overdub in their workflow.
So one of my favorite scenarios for overdub use is seeing podcast studios that are creating narrative series, pull selects from interviews they have to build out an episode, and they start to write narration in between these selects. Prior to this overdub use, they were doing table reads. So they'd be around a table or on Zoom, and they'd be reading selections of this narration live while playing the tape back and forth. And great and good. But what we've been seeing a lot is teams creating overdub voices for their hosts. So they'll actually use their host voice in their rough assemblies of these episodes. So during their table reads, somebody's pushing play in Descript and everybody's just sitting back and listening to the full episode. They can make changes to the script in real time, hear it back in their host voice, and then when they're ready to, they'll go in and track their individual host narration in Descript.
Yeah, and that's what I probably need to do a better job with overdub, and that's actually creating the custom voice based on the host or that. Because what I do most of the time, I just pick one of the voices that are out there, and we write the script, and that's what we use for that scratch track. Works really well, but I think you even get a closer view as to what it would look like if you do that custom voice. And maybe Kevin, talk to how that works. Like, what's the difference between the existing voices versus one that truly is custom based on someone that you're working with?
Yeah, so we have a handful of stock voices in Descript, which are great. They're real voices, real actors that we hired some years ago to create these overdub voices. And they sound great. And I know I use them. A lot of other customers and teammates use them as well for more generic content, whether it's going to be live or not, where they just need a voice, real human voice read, and they don't have access to a studio maybe. But the difference between using a stock voice and a custom created synthetic AI overdub voice is just that ability to create multiple styles. So being able to read sections in different styles, and you can create that from your training data that you input for overdub. And also for a branded podcast or a podcast with a specific host or narrator, having the tone and pacing set by that person's voice helps so much. And hearing it in another voice, in one of the stock voices, might just change the outcome and maybe some of your editorial decisions that are made during that early editing and review process.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. It's like when you, because we work with voiceover artists a lot, and then a big thing that helps them get a handle on the approach that they take is that tone, and a lot of times you can do what you can to explain it, but until they actually like see it and hear it, that's what it takes sometimes to really get exactly what you're looking for there. So that's probably something I'm going to do is just look at creating those custom overdub voices, for myself and our customers that are doing some of these narrative style pieces where they're, putting some more context around some of the selects that they're pulling from other episodes, which we're doing more and more as well. But, well, good. So those are two of the big features that we wanted to walk through with what's available in Descript. So let's look ahead a little bit. There's always something that you all are working on, and I know season 3 is around the corner. Kevin, you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about trying the beta and having folks understand what's entailed there. So you can walk us through that.
Yeah, Harmony, I would love all the folks that are interested to check out the beta. In the next coming weeks, we have some pretty exciting releases that we can't wait to share with everyone. And starting in July, folks that are in the beta program will be able to access this new set of features. Without going into too many details, there's a lot of advanced audio features that are going to be rolling out, including layers and effects and whatnot. But Harmony mentioned earlier templates. So the ability to create templates in this new approach to the app is going to be wildly expansive and allow us to collaborate easier, save our work easier, start from scratch, maybe 3 or 4 steps ahead, and be able to make our media in a templatized and maybe a little bit more formulaic, organized way, which I'm really excited about. Harmony, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the library work?
Yeah. So one question Kevin and I always get is, does Descript have stock music or GIFs or images? And the answer is soon we now will have stock libraries that folks can pull from. So for users that might not have music, readily available, you'll now just be able to select stock library, and you'll enter a keyword based on the type of music or images or GIFs that you're looking for, and then you'll be able to pull down from that existing library.
Awesome. So just another way that you all are making everything accessible in Descript without having to kind of go out somewhere, download it, re-import it. It's all going to be able to be a part of that workflow. Sounds like much easier.
Exactly. Just
Yeah.
trying to bring more of the process into, a one-stop shop. And then another piece of this release is just improved collaboration. So as you know, Tristan, Descript is a collaborative tool, but there's some quirks to it. So you're going to see sort of like an improved facelift of what collaboration can look like in Descript.
Very cool. And what does the beta program entail for folks that aren't familiar? Do they get an actual different version of Descript to use? Like, how does that work for folks that aren't familiar with that?
For anyone that's interested, we actually have a help article that talks exactly about our beta version of the app. So in that help article, it links to downloading that version of the app. So if you already have regular Descript on your computer, totally cool. You're just going to want to download the beta version separately, and that way you'll be able to experience these other features that haven't been released to our production version of Descript.
Very cool. Yeah, and I don't know if y'all knew, I'm part of the sounding board of Descript sounding board. So yeah, I've had a chance to see some of the new stuff that's coming out that I won't speak to because it's not ready yet. But it's very cool being a part of the process. I've enjoyed that as well. And I mean, I've seen Descript in the Slack channel and just all the collaboration there. It's been a lot of fun. So it sounds like this is something that people can volunteer for and kind of get a sneak peek as to what's coming down the line and always be up to date there.
Another feature that I'm wildly excited about is our multi-track recorder. So anyone that uses the camera or screen recorder knows that your computer audio and your mic input are summed to a single mono track. No longer. Every input is going to be on its own track within a sequence after using the recorder. So camera, whether you're doing a webcam recording or using your camera in the camera bubble for a screen recording, your screen, your audio input, computer sound will all be multi-tracked out so you can have complete control over each of those tracks individually.
Which now I think you could detach, right? Video from audio, but it sounds like that'll be a little different.
Exactly. You won't have to go through that extra step of detaching your audio from the video. It'll just give you that option from the get-go. One last thing to mention, it won't be coming in season 3, but one thing that we continue to hear from folks is, when will you support multi-language overdub? And so we actually have overdub in Spanish that we're working on right now. That'll be the first language it rolls out in. So we don't have a date yet, but all of the work that has been done is looking really promising. And then from there, we'll continue to roll out additional languages.
Well, good. Well, that's a good spot to end. We'll be on the lookout for what's coming down the road, and I'll be excited to have you all again in next couple months. Where can folks, I know you mentioned last time where people can find you, but let's do that again. Kevin, where can folks go to find out more about you?
Sure. You can add me on LinkedIn, of course, and my website is kevinoconnellmusic.com if you ever want to check out products that I'm working on, podcasts or music. But also join our newsletter, Descript.com, and keep in touch for events and new things coming down the pike.
All right. And Harmony?
Yeah, same. You can find me on LinkedIn, or, always can reach out to our Discord community as well. Very amazing, supportive community where people are learning from each other every day. And then, of course, our amazing support team can reach out to our support team through the app.
Kevin, Harmony, thanks for coming back to Recorded Content. I'll see you again real soon.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for having us, Tristan. See ya.